Live with the pigs, fat girl. You'll finally be where you belong. Cornelius Holt made sure his voice carried. The wagon had stopped at the base of Thunder Ridge just as dawn broke, frost clinging to the ground like a warning. The mountains loomed above them, dark, steep, indifferent. A few travelers paused along the road, sensing spectacle. Cornelius welcomed the attention. Beatrice Holt sat stiffly on the bench inside the wagon, hands folded in her lap, knuckles pale. At 28 years old and nearly 300 pounds, she had mastered stillness. Stillness meant fewer insults. Stillness meant survival. Her stepfather stood beside the wagon, immaculate coat, polished boots, the picture of respectability. Railroad magnate, civic benefactor, a man admired by the town, a man who had sold her. "This is as far as you go," Cornelius announced, pointing his cane toward the mountain trail. "Your husband lives up there, if you can call him that." A sticker rippled through the small crowd. Beatrice swallowed. She had not been asked if she wished to marry Logan Devereaux. The arrangement had been presented as fact. Cornelius owed Devereaux a considerable sum. After a failed expansion deal, a debt had to be settled. Beatrice was the settlement. "And your dowry," Cornelius continued, smiling thinly, "has arrived." He gestured sharply. A second wagon rolled forward. The skids dropped. 12 pigs spilled out in a frenzy of mud, squeals, and filth, thick-bodied, half-wild animals that immediately began rooting in the frozen ground. Their stench hit the air like an insult made physical. Laughter exploded. Someone clapped. Someone else shouted, "Perfect match!" Cornelius spread his arms theatrically. "A fitting arrangement, wouldn't you say? A fat woman and a pen full of swine. Perhaps your husband will let you sleep among them." Beatrice felt the heat rush to her face, shame burning so fiercely it made her dizzy. She stared at the ground, willing herself not to cry. Tears only ever made things worse. "And just so there's no confusion," Cornelius added, producing a folded contract, "the marriage terms are clear. You are required to live in whatever accommodations your husband provides. Cabin, barn, pig pen." He smiled. "If you refuse, you forfeit all claim to support and return to civilization with nothing." He had planned every word. Beatrice's chest tightened. Around her, the laughter grew louder. Then it stopped. A voice cut through the cold air, low, controlled, lethal. "Holt." The name alone silenced the road. A man stood 20 yards away, motionless as the mountain behind him. Logan Devereaux, 6'10", broad as a fortress, black hair loose past his shoulders, beard heavy against his chest. A rifle rested easily across his back, as natural to him as breath. His pale green eyes were fixed on Cornelius with the calm focus of a predator deciding whether to strike. "You want to die today?" Logan asked quietly. Cornelius stiffened. "Mr. Devereaux, I've brought your bride and her—" "You brought her here to humiliate her," Logan said, "and to insult me." Cornelius laughed nervously. 12 pigs is hardly—" Logan turned, surveying the animals with a calculating eye. 12 pigs, he said slowly, worth at least $2,000 in meat, fat, and breeding stock. Enough to survive winter and triple by next spring. He looked back at Cornelius. "You didn't curse me," Logan continued coldly. "You just made me prosperous." Cornelius blinked. Logan walked past him without another glance and stopped in front of Beatrice. He held out his hand. "Mrs. Devereaux," he said evenly, "welcome home." Beatrice stared at him, stunned. Not angry? Logan's mouth curved slightly. Why would I be? You're my wife. Those pigs are an investment, and Holt just paid his debt in full. He turned his gaze back to Cornelius. Thank you for the generous gift, Logan said. Now, get off my mountain before I decide to collect interest. Cornelius's face flushed with rage, but he retreated, climbing into his wagon as quickly as dignity allowed. Logan looked back at Beatrice. Can you walk? He asked. Or should I carry you? She lifted her chin. I can walk. Good, he said. It's 3 miles. The pigs will follow. Cruelty depends on an audience. It feeds on laughter, thrives on silence, and expects submission. But sometimes power changes hands. Not through shouting, but through the quiet refusal to accept humiliation as truth. So ask yourself this. When mockery dressed as tradition stands before you, do you join the laughter, or do you stand alone and offer your hand? Before we continue, let me ask you, where are you listening from today? Whether you're at home or on the road, I wish you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. And if this story touches you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. Now, let's get back to the story. The climb up Thunder Ridge was slow, deliberate, and silent. Logan Devereaux set the pace without comment, long strides eating up the narrow trail as though the mountain had been built for him alone. Beatrice followed, skirts gathered in her hands, breath steady but careful. Behind them, the pigs trailed in a disorganized procession, snorting and rooting, as if utterly unconcerned by the drama that had delivered them here. Beatrice had expected mockery. She had expected impatience, anger, perhaps even disgust once they were alone. What she had not expected was silence that felt respectful. Logan did not look back at her with irritation. When the path narrowed and her footing faltered, he slowed without saying a word. When her breathing grew heavy in the thinner air, he paused as though to admire the view, giving her time to recover without calling attention to it. It unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. At the ridge crest, the ranch came into view. Beatrice stopped short. She had imagined a crude shack, something barely fit for animals. Instead, below them sat a solid timber cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, a well-built barn, fenced corrals, a smokehouse, and open pasture rolling out toward the tree line. Everything was orderly, maintained, alive. "This is yours?" she asked quietly. "Ours," Logan corrected, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. He led the pigs into their pen with practiced ease, murmuring low commands that calmed them almost instantly. Beatrice watched closely, surprised by how quickly chaos turned into order under his steady presence. "You know pigs?" she asked. "I know livestock," he replied, "and opportunity." He turned to her then, really looking for the first time. Beatrice braced herself. Instead, he gestured toward the cabin. "Your bag?" She nodded mutely. "The cabin's yours," Logan said, lifting her trunk with one hand as if it weighed nothing. "I'll sleep in the barn until you're settled." When she stared at him, "You're giving me the house?" "It's a house," he said simply. "You're my wife. Why wouldn't I?" "But the contract," Cornelius said. "Cornelius Holt says a lot of things," Logan interrupted coolly. "Most of them are lies meant to keep people small." The words landed with quiet force. He set her bag inside the cabin and stepped back as though careful not to crowd her. "If you don't want to stay," he added, "say so now. I'll give you money, a horse, and safe passage down the mountain. No one here will stop you." Beatrice's heart pounded. No man had ever offered her a choice without punishment waiting behind it. "You'd let me go?" she asked. "Yes." The certainty in his voice made her throat tighten. She looked around the cabin, the clean hearth, the sturdy table, the shelves stocked for winter. She looked out the window at the pigs already settling into their new enclosure, and for the first time in years no one was laughing at her. "I'll stay," she said quietly, "for now." Logan nodded once. Then, "Welcome." The days that followed were harder than anything Beatrice had known, and easier than she had ever imagined. She worked from dawn until dusk, not because she was ordered to, but because she wanted to prove something to herself. She fed the pigs, cleaned the pen, learned their habits and temperaments. She cooked meals hearty enough to fuel mountain labor. She mended clothing, organized stores, planned for winter. Logan watched, never hovering, never correcting harshly. "You're good with them," he said one evening, nodding toward the pigs. "They respond to consistency," Beatrice replied, "and respect." He studied her thoughtfully. "So do people." That night, she lay awake in the cabin, listening to the wind brush against the walls. For once, the sound did not feel like a threat. She thought of Cornelius's laughter, of the townspeople's eyes, of how easily they had accepted her humiliation as entertainment, and she thought of Logan standing alone against it without raising his voice. In the morning, he handed her a bowl of stew before taking one for himself. "You eat first," he said. The words struck her harder than any insult ever had. She blinked rapidly and did as she was told. Weeks passed. Beatrice learned the land. The pigs thrived. Logan began talking about markets, about breeding plans, about expanding the ranch come spring. He asked her opinion, listened when she spoke. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the valley gold, Beatrice found him watching her from the fence line. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, self-conscious. "Because Holt thought he was cursing me," Logan replied, "but he gave me someone who sees value where others see waste." Her breath caught. "I'm not—" "Don't," he said firmly. "Don't make yourself smaller here." She nodded, unable to speak. Injustice thrives when worth is measured by cruelty standards. Compassion begins the moment someone refuses that measure entirely. It takes no courage to follow the crowd, but it takes something rare to stand apart and declare value where the world sees none. So consider this honestly. When given the power to define someone's worth, do you repeat what you were taught, or do you choose what is right? Work on Thunder Ridge was not kind, but it was honest. The mornings began before the sun cleared the peaks. Frost clung to the grass like a second skin, and breath turned to mist with every exhale. Beatrice pulled on her boots, shoulders already aching, and stepped into a day that demanded everything she had. Logan never rushed her. He rose early, split wood, checked the traps, and hauled feed to the pens before she finished tying her hair. When she appeared at the door, he simply nodded, as though her presence completed something. They worked side by side without ceremony. Beatrice learned quickly that pigs were not the filthy, foolish creatures people believed them to be. They were intelligent, observant, hierarchical. She watched the way the herd moved, which so led, which hung back, which fought when feed was late. "Duchess," she murmured to the largest sow one morning, scratching behind her ear. Logan paused. You name them. It helps me remember their habits, Beatrice said, flushing. If that's all right. That's smart, he replied. Livestock with names live longer. The simple praise settled into her bones. By midday, her back burned and her hands were raw. Logan handed her water without comment, positioning himself between her and the worst of the wind. When the sun dropped and the cold crept back in, he built the fire and waited until she sat before serving supper, always first. At night, she slept in the cabin alone, wrapped in quilts, heavy with warmth. Logan took the barn, insisting it was easier to rise early from there. She did not argue. Trust came slowly, and he respected its pace. Days blurred into weeks. Beatrice grew stronger, not smaller, stronger. Her body learned the work, muscles hardening under softness the world had once mocked. Her mind sharpened. She kept ledgers, tracked feed ratios, calculated yields. Logan began asking her opinion on everything. One afternoon, snow threatened early. Logan studied the sky, jaw tight. We'll need to slaughter 2 before the storm, he said. Beatrice nodded. Duchess should stay. She's the best breeder. Take the younger boar instead. He looked at her, surprised. Then he smiled. You're right. The word right echoed louder than laughter ever had. That evening, as they cleaned tools by the fire, Logan spoke without looking at her. Holt thought pigs were an insult, he said. Thought your body was a joke. Beatrice's hands stilled. He was wrong about both, she swallowed. Why does that matter to you? Logan finally met her eyes. Because prosperity isn't just money, it's what grows when people are treated like they belong. Her breath caught. She looked away quickly, afraid he might see too much. Later, she struggled with her hair, fingers aching from knots she couldn't quite reach. May I? Logan asked quietly from behind her. She hesitated, then nodded. His hands were enormous, calloused, scarred, made for axes and reins, yet they moved through her hair with careful patience, never pulling, never rushing. When he finished, he stepped back as though the moment itself were fragile. Beautiful, he murmured. The word landed differently this time. Beatrice turned, heart pounding. Logan, why are you being kind to me? He did not answer immediately. Because kindness is profitable, he said at last. It keeps good things alive. He paused. And because I'm starting to care whether you stay. Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. Outside, the pigs settled for the night, content and fed. Inside, the fire burned low and steady. Beatrice realized something then, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She was no longer waiting to be sent away. She was choosing to remain. Labor strips us of illusion. It reveals who exploits and who invests, who consumes and who cultivates. Respect is not spoken loudly. It is built through shared effort, through listening, through the steady decision to value what others discard. So ask yourself this. When someone works beside you instead of above you, do you recognize partnership or do you mistake it for weakness? Winter settled over Thunder Ridge the way truth settles into a life, slowly, unmistakably, without asking permission. Snow dust gathered in the corners of the valley and crept up the lower slopes. Mornings came brittle and pale. Nights drew long shadows across the cabin walls. Inside, the hearth burned steady, its warmth earned through labor and care. Beatrice learned the cabin the way one learns a language. She learned the way the floorboard near the door creaked if stepped on too quickly, the shelf that held dried herbs and smoked meat, the hook where Logan hung his coat every night without fail. She learned that the kettle sang softly when it was ready, and that bread tasted better when she let it rest, even if hunger urged haste. Logan learned her rhythms too. He learned that she woke early, even when she didn't need to, because sleeping late still felt like a crime. He learned that she apologized before asking for anything, even water. He learned the exact moment to speak, and the moments when silence was the kinder gift. They worked, they ate, they rested, and in that repetition, something began to loosen inside Beatrice. One evening, she caught herself laughing at nothing in particular, just a small, surprised sound that slipped out before she could stop it. She froze, waiting for mockery. Logan looked up from repairing a harness. "What?" he asked. She blinked. "Nothing, I just—" He smiled faintly. "Good." The word warmed her more than the fire. He never crowded her, never touched without invitation. When the wind howled at night, he barred the door and checked the perimeter before returning to the barn. When she woke from uneasy sleep, heart racing, he would sit by the hearth until she settled again, close enough to feel safe, far enough to respect the boundary she still needed. One night, as snow fell heavy and sleeted outside, Beatrice sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug of broth. "Why the barn?" she asked quietly. Logan glanced up. "Because trust isn't taken. It's earned." Her throat tightened. She nodded. Days later, she surprised herself by asking him to stay. "Just for supper," she said, eyes down. "It's cold." He didn't smile. He didn't tease. He simply nodded and took the chair across from her. They ate together, the fire painting their faces gold. When the meal ended, neither rushed to stand. Later, she struggled with her hair again, fingers tired from the day. "Let me," Logan said gently. She nodded. His hands moved slowly, reverently, as though each knot mattered. When he finished, he rested his hands briefly at her shoulders, warm, steady, and then withdrew. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said. "I don't know how not to be," she replied. "You're learning," he said. "That's enough." The realization came to her one quiet afternoon while she stood in the pig pen, watching Duchess nudge the younger sows aside with practiced authority. Duchess was not small. She was not gentle. She was respected because she knew her place and claimed it without apology. Beatrice smiled. That night, Logan found her studying ledgers by lamplight. "You should rest," he said. "In a minute." She hesitated. "Logan?" "Yes." "Why did you agree to the deal with Holt?" He was silent for a long moment. "I didn't," he said finally. "He offered you. I refused money instead. I said I'd only accept if you had a choice once you arrived." Her breath caught. "And if I'd left?" "Then I'd have lost the debt," he said simply, "and kept my honor." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. "No one's ever risked anything for me," she whispered. Logan crossed the room and knelt in front of her, careful, deliberate. "You're worth the risk," he said. "And you always were." She reached for him, then, fingers curling into his sleeve. He stilled, waiting. "Stay," she whispered. He did. The closeness that followed was quiet and tentative, built of trust rather than urgency. When he kissed her, It was with patience, as though learning her mattered more than claiming her. When she leaned into him, she did so without shrinking. For the first time, her body felt like home. Healing does not announce itself. It arrives disguised as routine, as patience, as a door that stays open when you expect it to close. A house becomes a home, not through possession, but through permission. The permission to exist without apology. So consider this, without judgment. When someone offers you safety without demanding gratitude, do you step into it? Or do you wait for the punishment that never comes? Prosperity never stays hidden for long. By midwinter, word had traveled down from Thunder Ridge into the valley. Wagons spoke, buyers spoke, men who counted profit the way others counted. Prayers began to notice that Logan Devereaux's ranch was not only surviving, it was expanding. The pigs multiplied. The smokehouse stayed full. Salted meat left the mountain and returned as coin, tools, seed, and winter goods. What Cornelius Holt had intended as mockery had become the backbone of a thriving operation. And prosperity, Beatrice learned, attracts interest the way blood attracts wolves. The first visitor came on a gray morning when frost coated the fences like glass. A livestock buyer named Ezra Cole rode in unannounced, boots polished, smile smooth, eyes sharp with calculation. He praised the herd, asked careful questions, and watched Beatrice far too closely while she answered them. "You've got a gift," Cole said pleasantly, "an instinct for husbandry. A woman with your mind shouldn't be wasted up here." Logan stepped between them without raising his voice. "Make your offer," he said, "or leave." Cole laughed lightly, hands raised. No offense meant. "Yes," Logan replied. "It was." Cole left quickly, but he was not the last. Soon came letters, offers. Rumors whispered through town. Some said Beatrice was being used. Others claimed she had bewitched Logan. A few suggested she had no legal claim at all, that the marriage was nothing more than a transaction enforced by isolation. Beatrice heard the whispers when she went down to trade once a month. She felt the looks, the half-smiles, the familiar judgment wearing new clothes. One evening, she returned quiet and tight-lipped. Logan noticed. "They talked," he said. She nodded. "They always do." He waited. "They say I'm lucky," she continued, "that I should be grateful, that without you I'd be nothing." Logan's jaw clenched. "And what do you say?" She looked down at her hands, strong now, scarred by honest work. "I say they don't understand, but part of me still hears them." That night, as the fire burned low, Beatrice finally spoke the fear she had been carrying. "If the trouble gets worse," she said softly, "you could protect the ranch by sending me away." Logan went still. "You're the reason it thrives," he said. "I'm the reason they're watching," she replied. "I don't want to cost you everything." He crossed the room and took her hands, firm and grounding. "This place prospers because we built it together," he said. "Anyone who wants the profit without the partnership can choke on their envy." She swallowed hard. "And if they come with papers, courts, claims?" "Then we face them," he said, "together." Days later, the pressure arrived wearing authority. Cornelius Holt rode up the mountain with a lawyer and 2 men carrying ledgers instead of rifles. He looked thinner, sharper, desperate in a way that pretended to be confidence. "Well," Cornelius said, eyes flicking to the pins, "you've done quite well with my property." Beatrice stepped onto the porch beside Logan. "Your property?" she asked calmly. "The pigs," Cornelius replied. "They were mine, loaned, not gifted, and this marriage," he smiled thinly, "was coerced. I intend to reclaim what's owed." The lawyer cleared his throat and produced documents. Logan did not look at them. "Say it plainly," Logan said. Cornelius's eyes gleamed. "Return the livestock, dissolve the marriage, or I take this to court and bleed you dry." Silence stretched. Beatrice felt the old reflex rise, the urge to step aside, to make herself smaller so the storm would pass. She felt it, and then she felt something else. Resolve. "No," she said. Every head turned. "No," Cornelius repeated incredulously. "You sold me," Beatrice said evenly. "You mocked me. You tried to break me in public. And when the world laughed, you thought that would be the end of me." She stepped forward. "You don't get to profit from what you tried to destroy." Cornelius sneered. "You'd rather see your husband ruined?" Beatrice did not look at Logan. "I'd rather stand with him," she said, "than survive by surrendering again." Cornelius's smile vanished. "We'll see how noble you feel in court." He turned and rode away, his men scrambling after him. That night, Beatrice could not sleep. "If the judge rules against us," she began. Logan cut her off gently. "Then we fight again." "And if fighting costs you the land, then land can be rebuilt," he said. "What we have can't." She leaned into him, trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of choosing herself. "We all believe we are kind until kindness becomes costly. We all believe we are brave until courage demands sacrifice. Prosperity reveals character, not when it arrives, but when others try to take it without honoring its roots. So ask yourself this, without comfort or illusion: if protecting what you've built required risking everything you own, would you stand or would you pay the price of silence? Cornelius Holt returned at dawn, not alone. The sound of hooves broke the morning stillness, sharp and deliberate. Logan was already outside, splitting wood, when the riders crested the ridge. Cornelius at the center, flanked by 2 deputies from the valley and a lawyer whose coat looked far too clean for mountain dirt. Authority, like cruelty, preferred an audience. Beatrice stepped onto the porch beside Logan, the cold biting through her sleeves. She did not retreat. She did not lower her eyes. Cornelius dismounted slowly, savoring the moment. "Let's be civil," he said, spreading his hands. "I've brought officers of the law. We're here to settle matters properly." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Devereaux, Mrs. Holt, this is a notice of claim. The livestock in question was obtained under false pretenses. The marriage contract is being challenged on grounds of coercion and—" "Stop," Logan said. His voice was calm. It carried. "You came here to take what you couldn't profit from until it proved valuable," he continued. "You don't get to call that justice." Cornelius scoffed. "Spare me the frontier philosophy. I'm offering you a way out. Hand over the pigs, dissolve the marriage, and I'll withdraw the suit." Beatrice felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the old instinct to step aside so the damage would miss someone else. She ignored it, No, she said. The word was quiet, unyielding. Cornelius turned on her, incredulous. You would condemn him to ruin? I would condemn you to irrelevance, Beatrice replied. You only remember me when you think you can take something. One of the deputies shifted uncomfortably. The other studied the pigs, the pens, the smokehouse. Evidence of labor that could not be forged. The lawyer frowned. Mrs. Holt, if the court rules, I'm Mrs. Devereaux, Beatrice corrected evenly, and the court will hear how I was sold, mocked, threatened with homelessness if I didn't comply. It will hear how the livestock was given publicly as dowry, witnessed by half the road to Thunder Ridge. She stepped down from the porch, standing shoulder to shoulder with Logan, and it will hear how this ranch prospered because of work, not cruelty. Cornelius's face darkened. You were nothing without me. Logan took one step forward. She was everything despite you, he said. Cornelius's patience snapped. Seize the animals, he barked. By order. A low sound rolled through the pen. Duchess, massive and unmovable, planted herself between the men and the herd. The other pigs clustered behind her, bristling and loud. They did not charge, they did not scatter, they held. The deputies hesitated. These animals are under my care, Beatrice said calmly. Any attempt to take them will be documented as theft and provocation. The lawyer glanced at the deputies. This is messy. Cornelius laughed sharply. You think a judge will side with a fat woman and a mountain savage? Beatrice met his eyes. I think the truth will. Logan turned slightly toward the deputies. You're welcome to inspect the contracts, the ledgers, the witnesses, or you can leave and spare yourselves the climb back up here. The mountain wind moved through the trees, steady and cold. One deputy cleared his throat. Sir, this doesn't look like coercion. Cornelius stared at him. You're making a mistake. The deputy shook his head. We're done here. The lawyer folded his papers, lips thin. We'll review the claim. Cornelius stood rigid, fury burning through the careful mask he wore for towns and courts. This isn't over, he hissed at Beatrice as he mounted his horse. I will take something from you, one way or another. Beatrice did not flinch. You already tried, she said, and failed. They rode away. The mountain swallowed the sound of hooves. Beatrice's knees went weak only after they were gone. Logan steadied her without a word, his hand firm at her back. You were magnificent, he said quietly. I was terrified, she admitted. He nodded. That's what courage feels like. They went into. Logan barred the door. The bird burned bright. Outside, the pigs settled, untroubled, as if the land itself had accepted the outcome. True strength is not the ability to dominate. It is the refusal to surrender when domination disguises itself as law. Power shouts. Courage stands still. So consider this, without comfort. When those who once controlled you return with papers and threats, do you shrink back into silence? Or do you claim the ground you've earned and refuse to move? After Cornelius Holt rode down Thunder Ridge with his papers still unclaimed, the land did not celebrate. It simply continued. Snow fell in a slow, patient hush. Smoke rose from the chimney each morning. The pigs rooted and slept and grew, unconcerned with human pride or defeat. Life returned to its steady rhythm, not triumphant, but earned. Logan repaired the fence where boots had scuffed the ground. Beatrice returned to her ledgers, her hands sure as she tallied feed, yields, and plans for spring. Prosperity did not shout. It worked, at night, The rifle remained by the door, not from fear, from responsibility. Beatrice noticed the way Logan listened before sleeping, how his gaze lingered on the tree line at dusk. She did not ask him to stop. Love, she had learned, was not asking someone to forget what the world had taught them, but standing beside them while they carried it. One evening, they sat together by the fire, the cabin warm and close. Outside, the wind brushed the walls like a question that had already been answered. "Do you ever think he'll come back?" Beatrice asked quietly. Logan considered. "Men like him always try once more." She nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He looked at her, something like pride softening his sharp features. "You already are." She leaned back against him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. Once, she would have made herself smaller, even in comfort. Now, she let herself rest exactly as she was. "I used to think home was something you were allowed into," she said, "if you behaved, if you earned it." "And now?" Logan asked. "And now I think home is something you build," she replied, "by staying." Outside, Duchess grunted softly in her sleep. The herd shifted, calm and secure. Later that night, Beatrice woke to silence, the deep kind that demands attention. She found Logan standing at the window, watching the dark. "They're not here," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, stepping beside him, "but it matters that you're watching." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "If they come again," he said, "they won't find what they're looking for." Beatrice smiled faintly. They never did. The fire burned low behind them. The mountain stood firm beyond the glass, and in that space between vigilance and peace, something stronger than certainty settled in: belonging. Home is not the absence of threat. It is the presence of someone who stands with you when the threat remembers your name. We spend our lives mistaking silence for safety and permission for love. But home is simpler and braver than that. Home is the place where you no longer ask if you deserve to stay. And so the ending remains open, as honest endings must. Because love is not proven once but chosen again, each time the world tests its claim. Is love strong enough to withstand what waits beyond the ridge? Only time and resolve will answer. Stories like this are not about perfection or rescue. They are about dignity reclaimed and the quiet courage it takes to stop apologizing for your existence. If this story reached you, wherever you are, know that wanting safety does not make you weak. It makes you human. And if you still believe that love can be built from work, respect, and the refusal to be humiliated ever again, then stay. The next story will be waiting.